Soldiers are trained to speak about everything. They file reports, write statements, give debriefs, and repeat the same events until memory turns mechanical. But there are moments that never make it into paperwork. Moments when men and women who have faced artillery, ambushes, and death itself are quietly told to forget what they saw. This is one of those moments. The battlefield in question no longer appears on most maps. It exists as a stretch of churned earth bordered by scrubland and broken tree lines, a place used repeatedly across decades for training exercises, live fire drills, and temporary deployments. Nothing about it looks unusual in daylight. That was the first thing the soldiers noticed. No strange smells, no strange sounds, just ground that felt wrong beneath their boots, as if it remembered something. The unit had been rotating through the area for 3 days when the first incident occurred. Radios began cutting out in short bursts, not dead, not jammed, but distorted, as if someone were breathing into the signal. Maintenance blamed terrain interference. Command accepted the explanation. The soldiers did not. They had all operated in worse conditions without issue. Something here resisted being spoken through. That night, during perimeter watch, movement was reported beyond the wire. Thermal optics showed shapes that bled heat in irregular patterns, too large to be animals, too inconsistent to be vehicles. When flares were deployed, nothing appeared, just empty ground and the lingering sense of being observed. One sentry later admitted that he felt relief when his shift ended.
By the second day, the ground itself became the focus. Shallow depressions appeared where none had been before, like footprints pressed into damp soil. Except they were wrong, too deep, too wide, as if something heavy had knelt there. Engineers examined the marks and quietly filled them in. They did not log the discovery. Orders came down shortly after to restrict movement in certain sectors without explanation. It was during a routine sweep that they found it. At first, it looked like debris, half buried and coated in dirt. A fragment of equipment, maybe. But when it was cleared, the shape resolved into something unmistakably human and unmistakably not. Bones fused where they should not have been. Metal embedded through joint and marrow, not as shrapnel, but as if grown together. Identification tags were present, but they did not match any missing personnel. The reaction was immediate and controlled. Weapons were raised, a cordon was established, and then the order came through the command net, calm and absolute. No photographs, no samples, no discussion. The remains were to be reburied where they lay. When one soldier asked for clarification, the response was silence, followed by a simple acknowledgement tone, as if the question had never been asked. That night, no one slept. Dreams came quickly and violently. Soldiers reported the same images independently. Fields filled with figures that would not stay dead. Voices calling out names that only the listener knew. One corporal woke screaming after seeing himself standing in the same depression they had filled earlier that day. Medical chalked it up to stress. The soldiers knew better, but they kept it to themselves. On the third morning, command arrived in person. Not the officers the unit recognized, but others, unmarked, unfamiliar. They walked the ground slowly, speaking little, listening often. One of them knelt where the remains had been found and stayed there longer than necessary. When he stood, his face had lost color. Shortly after, the exercise was terminated. Before extraction, the unit was assembled and given a final briefing. What they had encountered was classified. What they thought they had seen was incorrect. What they would say afterward was nothing. Not to families, not to fellow soldiers, not even to each other. The consequences were not spelled out. They did not need to be. Years later, those who were there still avoid that stretch of land. Some left the service early. Others stayed but never volunteered for similar assignments again. When asked about the experience, they change the subject, or joke, or fall silent. And in quiet moments, when no one else is listening, A few will admit that the battlefield felt alive, and that whatever they found there did not want to be remembered. One soldier eventually broke the silence, not publicly, but in a letter never sent. He wrote that the place carried weight, like a grave no one had marked. He described the air as thicker near the discovery site, harder to breathe, as if the ground itself resented disturbance. He admitted that part of him wanted to dig again, not out of curiosity, but out of a terrible certainty that they had put something back that should stay buried. Others noticed smaller things after returning home, equipment misplaced without memory, dreams triggered by the smell of wet earth or rusted metal, a sense, difficult to explain, that someone else was standing just behind them when they were alone. None of it rose to the level of official concern. All of it was enough to keep them awake. What makes the story linger is not what was found, but how quickly it was erased. Battlefields are meant to be studied, documented, and remembered. This one was sealed in silence. The soldiers followed orders, as they were trained to do. But obedience does not erase experience. It only teaches people how to carry it quietly. If the battlefield still exists, it does so without markers. No signs warn travelers away. No records mention what lies beneath. Just soil, waiting, holding on to what was pressed into it long ago. And somewhere, buried deeper than reports or memory, is the understanding that some discoveries are not meant to be shared, because once spoken, they do not stay contained. Those who know understand the order was not about secrecy alone, but about keeping something buried that should never rise again, anywhere, at any cost, permanently.